So another video on the research method stuff. This is the little bit about the maths and significance that I said that we would need. So remember, you need to be able to do maths kind of calculations in the exam of mean, mode, median and range. We did these in class, no one seemed to have any problem with them. Remember, one weakness of the mean, it might ask you, it's a very small chance, but they might ask you why you would use a different measure other than the mean, and it's because the mean is affected by outliers. If you've got everyone in the class that didn't do that well, and then one person who got full marks, they will drag the results, meaning that the mean isn't actually representative of how everyone else did. So the mean is affected by outliers. And we then need to have a kind of understanding of this concept of significance. So significant means probably not due to chance. And if we say something is significant, we just are saying that we don't think that it's due to just random luck. And we use the level 0.05 usually. So what that means is the probability of our results being due to chance, so the probability of our results being due to chance is less than 0.05. So that means that there is less than a 1 in 20 probability that our results are due to luck. So we are saying that our results are significant because of this. So since there's less than a 1 in 20 chance, that's 0.05, since there's less than a 1 in 20 chance our results are due to just luck, then we will say that they are significant and probably not due to that luck. So we accept the hypothesis and reject the null. If it goes the other way, if the probability of our results of due to chance is greater than 1 in 20, then we say our results are not significant, and we accept the null and reject the normal hypothesis. Remember, the only real difference with this is this can be underlined. If they put a line underneath this, it means less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. The next kind of method that you need to know is correlational studies. So remember, a correlation establishes a relationship, it's a relationship between two things, between two variables. It's not an IV or a DV, do not talk about those, they are covariables or just variables. So there's two different variables. Unlike experiments, correlations, remember the big weakness, do not give us cause and effect. You can't say that one thing causes the other, you can just say that there is a relationship between them. There is a relationship between the amount of Netflix you watch and how well you do on your exams. One doesn't cause the other necessarily. You might watch a lot of Netflix because you know you're not going to do well on your exams, so why bother? Or it could work the other way around. You watch a lot of Netflix, so you don't revise enough, and you don't do well on your exams. So, again, a correlation study measures two variables. And there's three different types of correlation or results we can get. First up, remember, when we write a hypothesis for a correlation, we don't say that one will cause another. We don't say that this group will do better. We don't say that people who do this will have a higher result. So we don't say people who watch Netflix will do worse on exams. We just say there will be a relationship or there will be a correlation between these two things. Yeah, we just say there's going to be a relationship. That's all we can do. Correlation coefficients are just a correlation, either a perfect positive or a perfect negative, written as numbers. So it's written as a number between 0 for, it's written as a number between -1 and +1. So the three types of correlation, I'll come back to this, the three types of correlation are a positive correlation, when one variable increases, the other variable increases, though not necessarily at the same rate. They can change at different kind of rates. This one is a perfect correlation though. We can get a negative correlation where one increases and the other one decreases. Again, not necessarily at the same rate. These are kind of the definitions of what we would say for a positive or a negative correlation. No correlation is when there's absolutely no pattern. Remember, this could be written as a positive 1. It's a perfect correlation, so you could say it's +1, and this would be written as -1, with everything else falling between. If you have a positive correlation that's less strong, then it would be higher than 0, but it wouldn't be +1. It would be, say, +0.4. Advantages of correlation: it can let us study things that we couldn't ethically manipulate. So we couldn't make one family rich and one family poor to say how it affects the kids' exam scores. So we have to find a range of families who have different levels of wealth. and see how that affects their kids' achievement at school. And it gives us, or it lets us find out relationships that we can study at a later date using experiments and things like that to do get a cause and effect relationship. Disadvantages, again, big one, no cause and effect. And there might be extraneous variables that affect the results. So remember, a correlation that we've got is there's more ice cream sales correlate with murders. That doesn't mean that when you go out and murder somebody, you suddenly want to have an ice cream, or vice versa. There is extraneous variables of hot weather. When it's sunny outside, more people buy ice cream, and there are also more murders. Observations is another method. I think it's the last one. I can't remember if I've already done self-reports in another video. So there are different types of observation. There are non-participant and participant observations. So in a participant observation, you are part of the group. You join the group that you are going to observe. So you might go and join the local motorcycle gang because you want to observe them. This gives us in-depth and detailed information. Since you're part of the group, you're finding out lots and lots of detail. However, it's difficult to record the data objectively. You are going to be affected. There's going to be bias because you are part of that group. You can't help but look at them favourably, things like that. It's impossible to replicate, or it's very difficult to replicate, since you being part of the group and the things that happen when you join it is a one-off. And there are possible ethical problems with consent. Non-participant observations are the opposite. You are not part of the group that you're observing. You just sit back, don't interact with them or you interact with them as little as possible, and you just monitor what is going on. These can be ethical. Again, the strengths and weaknesses are pretty much just reversed. I haven't wrote it on here, but the data is more objective, it's less open to bias, and it's easy to replicate. Disadvantages, since you are there and not part of them, that might affect the results and get demand characteristics. Sorry, it says impossible to replicate. It's not necessarily. That is incorrect. And it gathers less depth and detail. That's kind of a big one. Controlled and naturalistic. A controlled observation is one that takes place in an artificial laboratory setting, where we have controls over the situation, and more commonly than not, we cause it to happen. So we set up a situation that we want to occur. So famously, there's cases where we've got parents and children into a room, and what we have is the parent leave the room and leave the child with a stranger. Now, we have caused that to happen, which means that it is quicker, and we can be more precise in what we're observing. If we did it in a natural setting, which is just done in a natural setting, in a real-life environment, not artificial, not controlled, we would have to wait for that behaviour to happen. Other than that, we talk about ecological validity, we talk about reliability, we talk about control, we talk about ethics, exactly the same as if we were doing lab and field experiments. So controlled or structured observations, these are often called structured. They might be called structured in your exam. So in a structured observation, it's high reliability, good levels of control, removes extraneous variables to help get cause and effect, and they are quicker and easier to do, but they cost more money, and they are low in ecological validity and mundane realism. Naturalistic is just the opposite. Overt and covert. An overt observation, the person that you're observing knows that they are being observed, whereas in a covert observation, they don't. We'll often do this through one-way mirrors, things like that. Remember, you can mix all of these together so you can have a non-participant covert structured observation, an overt non-participant naturalistic observation, and we can mix all of these up. Remember, the big issue with covert and overt is ethical issues and demand characteristics and social desirability. Very much as you would expect about being watched in different situations. Evaluation of observations in general. It lets us see what people actually do rather than just what they report. So observations are more valid than self-reports. And weaknesses, there is observer bias, ethical issues, social desirability and demand characteristics, things like that. Remember, also in an observation, you will normally have a checklist of behaviour, which we call a coding scheme. If you've missed things off that coding scheme, so for example, when we looked at aggression in children, if you're not looking for the children biting, if you don't have that on your coding scheme and one of the kids bites another kid, then you can't record it. So that questions the validity of your findings as well. Remember, there's 3 types of sampling that we might have to mention if you design an observation. There is continuous sampling, where we monitor and note everything that occurs. So it gets lots of detail, but it's hard to do because you have to note everything down. There's event sampling, where we literally just tally off every time a certain type of behavior happens. So again, in that coding scheme. This is useful because it collects, again, a lot of data. However, if your coding scheme's wrong, you'll miss stuff. But you also might miss data that you're recording down if too much stuff happens at the same time. Finally, it's cut off the title, but time sampling is where we look at people every, say, 10 seconds over a 10-minute period, and then we repeat that a little while later. So we set a time period that we're going to look at participants for over a period of time. So literally, we look at your behavior every 5 seconds and write down what you did. That reduces the number of observations. However, it does mean that we're going to, and it shows behavior over time. That should be a strength. However, weakness is we do miss behaviors. If I'm only looking at you for 1 second out of every 10, I'm missing the majority of your behavior. So when we carry out an observation, those are kind of the steps that we take part in. Remember, we'll do a pilot study, which is a little mini study before we do the main one, to test our coding scheme. And we'll also, in an observation, very good for reliability. You can make notes about this for reliability because it raises an observation. If we get 2 people and they do the same observation and get the same results, we say it's high in inter-rater reliability or inter-observer reliability. And it turns out I haven't done self-reports. I'll very quickly go through this. I've got about 3 minutes. I'll try and get it done. So questionnaires consist of open and closed questions. So remember, a survey is just a series of set questions, a questionnaire, given out to a large group of people, and these contain either open or closed questions, or indeed both. Remember, closed questions, I think I've got a slide on the next slide. Yeah, we'll come on to this. And then there's interviews, which are either structured, unstructured, or semi-structured. So types of questions. Open questions are ones where you can say whatever you like about a topic. We just ask you a very general question, and you are free to answer in your own words, and that generates qualitative data. So again, all the strengths and weaknesses of qualitative data, and it is more valid because people are allowed to say whatever they choose. A closed question, we give you set answers. So how much do you enjoy psychology? It's brilliant, it's fantastic, it's amazing. Those are your only 3 options. Or we'll do it on a rating scale. Strongly agree to strongly disagree. Sorry, that would be a like it scale. Or we do it on a rating scale, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you at college? Things like that. We will measure giving set answers. That is good because it generates quantitative data and you get all the strengths of that. However, it doesn't give people the option to select whatever they want. They are forced to pick one of the answers that I've given them, so it's less valid. Things like that. And also remember, other people might interpret numbers differently. What is a 7 to one person might be a 9 to another. And this is a quick summary of all those different types of questions I said. You can pause these and have a look, obviously. You can give these face-to-face. You can send them on through the post. You can do it in the internet. Different ways of doing it. Again, if you're designing a self-report in the exam, you might mention some of these things. Strengths and weaknesses. We get to a large number of people, or we can, so it makes it more generalizable. They are usually anonymous to try and cut down on social desirability, but that's still going to be a factor. There's still going to be some social desirability. Response rates are low often, so that makes it hard to generalize. Very few people return questionnaires, so we can't generalize their results to other people. There might be response bias or social desirability, things like that. Very quickly, remember interviews, there are closed questions and open questions, so we get the same strengths and weaknesses. Unstructured interviews, the big issue is that they cannot be repeated, or they're harder to be repeated, since everyone can give whatever question or can be given different questions. Whereas a structured interview is the opposite. Everyone gets the same set questions, but that means that you can't respond really to what the participant has said. You can't change your questions to fit the answers that they are given. There's also the issue of social desirability. So that was a very quick summary. of most of what we've done in research methods. Thanks.